Alex Hanser here, coming to you from the mobile studio in Taos, New Mexico. There's a very strange story out there, actually several, regarding the potential possession of a Kyle Odom. This man in the last week was involved in a shooting rampage in Idaho, where he became convinced that a pastor of a church was a shape-shifting reptilian. Now you can research the story for yourself to see how strange this is. And you can read for yourself, as I have, his 21-page manifesto, get inside his mind. He describes seeking to expand his consciousness through some form of meditation, although it's not clear what kind of meditation that was. And he describes some astral experiences with some alien beings that basically downloaded into his consciousness how they controlled the human species, even how humans were their sex slaves. And it's not really a funny situation, because they somehow, whatever was talking to him, whatever was inside of his consciousness, began to shape his reality for him. And in his manifesto, he describes what a lot of quote-unquote gang stalking victims describe. Those that have described themselves as being a targeted individual. And there's widespread assumption that these are human-sourced attacks. And it's very short-sighted to assume such a thing. With the case with Kyle and a few of the others, it isn't truly clear what it was that got inside their mind to warp reality in a sense to where they went on a shooting spree. With the case of Kyle, he wrote in his manifesto how people were actors in his environment, watching him everywhere he went. The whole whispering in the wristwatch, surveillance. And there are some people that believe that they literally have a team of 50 that for whatever reason has been assigned to them. Now, one interesting thing to add about this whole story, Kyle Odom did serve in the military. Whether or not some of the actions he may have partaken in, or just simply being there, I do suspect many of these Marines and soldiers have attracted certain negative entities through their presence in that region. And it's possible that some of them have been bringing back some of these spirits, which can play a role in the rise of domestic violence, suicide, and suicide by cop that we do see from some men that are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, which is really in some cases a cover for something far more problematic that has taken place within their spirit. So Kyle Odom, to make things even more strange, he was convinced this pastor was a shape-shifting reptilian, and he shot him 6 times, and the pastor survived. The people are calling it a miracle. And after the shooting, he apparently, I believe, boarded a plane and somehow, some way, made his way to D.C. And he was found with a list, a hit list. It's like he was, in his mind, Rowdy Roddy Piper in the movie They Live. Putting on the sunglasses, I'm here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. It's like maybe somebody took that a little bit too literal. Now I'm going to show you the mainstream news clip in just a moment. But I just want to say this. I don't think there's anything rational about any human being that would take their theories about alien interference in human affairs to a violent place. In my opinion, and in my intuition, that's a hallmark of some sort of interference and penetration of his own consciousness. Now, let's look at that news clip.
New developments tonight in the hunt for Kyle Odom. Within the last 2 hours, Odom's Facebook page was active. His profile picture updated to this drawing, and he also added 50 new friends. Odom is suspected of gunning down a Coeur d'Alene pastor Sunday afternoon, firing 10 shots at Tim Remington. Witnesses say Odom then sped away in his silver 2004 Honda Accord with Idaho license plates. He is still at large, and tonight it appears he considered shooting a second person at that church. That's according to a manifesto Odom mailed to his parents' home and a similar letter sent to the KXLY4 studios. Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Nadine Woodward. 3 days after a pastor was shot outside his Coeur d'Alene church, letters the suspected gunman mailed are now showing up at local media outlets, including here at KXLY. Our Jeff Humphrey joins us now with a look at Odom's correspondence, now in the hands of Coeur d'Alene police. Jeff?
Nadine, it is clear that Mr. Odom wanted to take the guesswork out of who was responsible for Sunday's attack on Pastor Remington. The letter that we received at KXLY also a sign that Odom premeditated this ambush and likely had made preparations for his successful getaway. Today, a letter postmarked in Spokane on Monday showed up here at the KXLY4 studios. Inside this business-sized envelope was a single piece of paper that was titled "The Truth About Kyle Odom." It appears the note was generated on a color copier and that a similar letter that was delivered to his parents' home had a thumb drive inside. Detectives say documents on the drive contain rambling writings in which Odom lays out his reasons for shooting Pastor Remington. Police say it shows the attack was not random. Investigators are not saying if the manifesto provides clues about Odom's location or if he has any plans for violence in the future. Odom's father, Terry, tells KXLY that he had dinner with his son the night before the shooting, and there was no indication that Odom was planning any type of attack. Odom's dad says the Sunday shooting took them totally by surprise and that Odom is not a violent person. Terry Odom adds that his son probably doesn't realize the gravity of what happened in the church parking lot. Odom is urging his son, Kyle, to surrender himself to police wherever he is tonight, that his family is very concerned about Kyle's welfare, and they want him back safely in Coeur d'Alene. Late this afternoon, a Facebook page registered to Odom posted this text about the shooting. It reads in part, "The world is ruled by an ancient civilization from Mars. Pastor Tim was one of them, and he was the reason my life was ruined. I shot Pastor Tim 12 times. There is no way any human could have survived that event." And so, Nadine, it's clear Mr. Odom is a troubled man who was not in his right mind at the time of the shooting. Coeur d'Alene police say Odom's mailed-in manifesto also indicates Odom was targeting a second church member. Detectives say they have contacted that person and taken steps to ensure their safety. Jeff Humphrey, KXLY4.
And to make things even more bizarre, in the last week there's a report about the Kalamazoo shooter saying that he believed that he was being controlled by AI, literally by his Uber app. He was an Uber driver, and he told police that he was seeing upside-down pentagrams and that he was receiving some form of subliminal message to do what he did. And in an LA Times article on Kyle Odom, to go back a story, they referenced several shooters that reported voices in their head. From the guy that went after the congressman in Tucson to a couple of other cases, the shooting at the military facility, also reporting voices in the head. And here's one final story that I'm going to share as we look at this trio of stories and we actually look at a pattern here. The Slender Man killers. Two little girls that believed they were having some sort of a relationship or friendship with Slender Man, a creepy internet character that is often featured with its tall, creepy, pedophile-like arms around children. Somehow or another, this has become a fad on the internet that has been pulling some young people into that matrix. And apparently these young girls believe that they had to sacrifice, murder, attack another girl to appease this entity. So whether the entity comes in the form of Slender Man or voices in the head or an Uber app or some sort of, as Kyle described it, female reptilian that he also, I believe, reported some sort of sexual abuse. Akin to some of the stories that we've heard about alien abduction. And so we look at these stories together on the table. And we also look back to 2012. Remember the face eater in Florida? And it was assumed and reported initially that he was on bath salts. And then the autopsy report came out showing that he was not on bath salts. And this was also during the time of the Venus transit, the summer of 2012. And I think a lot of really weird things were happening around that time on the planet. And there were others that also noticed the spat of attacks, the zombie-like attacks. And it was in that year of 2012. And so I'm not here to tell you what to think. And I'm certainly not interested in pushing a philosophy that we are powerless over these entities. But are entities involved in some of these cases? I think that's a very interesting question. I'm Alex Ansary, signing off from Taos, New Mexico.